Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. Ruth is a visiting professor at a large university in Ireland, and Claire is an associate professor at a primarily undergraduate university in Northern California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss.
Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Ruth.
And I'm Claire, and today we're talking about how to choose what to do. But first, Ruth, how was your week?
My week was awesome. As you know, because we had to reschedule, my youngest had a birthday last week and had a birthday party. And honestly, part of me is just like, oh man, we got to do this thing because it's a big, event. But the thing that blew my mind, so I don't know, have I told you that she's really obsessed with pigs?
Oh, I do kind of remember that.
Yeah. We went at one point in where we lived before, we went to see these baby pigs and that was it. She's smitten with pigs, she just loves them. And then she kind of also likes when people are like, pigs, how unusual. She's like, I know, I'm just that kind of, But so I guess all the kids who came to her birthday, the parents must have been like, what is she like? And they're like, pigs. I had no idea there was so much pig related, because I thought I had purchased all of the pig related stuff you could possibly purchase. But oh my God, we got fairy lights, string lights with their pigs. We got a pig space hopper. My friend actually bought this grunting farting pig that if it's moved it makes crazy noises, and she had actually been driving to the birthday party and had to pull the car over because she thought something was broken in the car and then remembered that, so she warned me about it, and I'm glad she did because it did make very distressing noises. Luckily we figured out how to turn it off. So, and then there's so many books, so I got her a book, Bat Pig.
Pig?
The origin story of this superhero. One which is so genius, but it's called Ham Helsing. So it's like Van Helsing from Dracula, but it's a pig.
Oh, that's great.
I just had no idea there was so many pig related. We have a pig kitchen timer, a pig pencil sharpener, she got a pig space hopper. We haven't inflated it yet. So anyway, there's a lot of pig loot.
That's so fun.
Because part of me is like, I can't keep this up. There's no way but then I think there is. There's just indefinite amount of pigs sort of paraphernalia.
That's wonderful.
So
I love the theme, you maybe wouldn't be excited to get a pencil sharpener, but a pig pencil sharpener, yes.
God,
and then it's like, now we have all these pig related things. That's super fun. I love that.
But the other night I went in to check on her, and I was like, I need to have some kind of intervention, because she also has every pig stuffy in her bed, but now she is
there's not room for her.
Weird shape trying to fit, because did I tell you about one day when I was in the supermarket and a lady had a giant, she had a big carrier bag that had a pig on it. So I was like, oh, my daughter loves pigs, and she was like, I have this giant pig stuffy at home that my granddaughter is not interested in. Can I give it to you? And I was like, okay. And she came over and dropped it over.
Wow, that's awesome.
I know, but it was this immaculate pig stuffy, but it's the size of a 3-year-old, it's not nothing. So anyway, super generous, and she loves the pig, but I think I need to do something about her bed situation.
Oh my goodness. That's wonderful.
Back pain. But anyway, so that was this week. But tell me, how was your week?
Oh, my week was good. I've been rereading one of my favorite books, which is called Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Ooh. And it's really just got so many fairy tale things all fit in there into the same story. It's like turning, you've heard of turning straw into gold, but this is turning silver into gold. And I really have been enjoying watching all the different fairy tales intertwine and just bringing in themes the number 3 is powerful, and knowing someone's name is a big deal, and I don't know, all these things that come up in stories, and then just, I don't know, I really love seeing them come up again, and just, they feel right because you heard them elsewhere, and now you're hearing them here in this different way.
Why is that so satisfying?
I don't know.
Because you're like, oh, I recognize this thing, and it's so pleasing.
It is so pleasing.
But yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. So I've been having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Spinning Silver, great story. Yeah, I feel like it's technically it's a Rumpelstiltskin retelling with this whole spinning straw into gold thing, but then there's just so many other ones that are just popping in there, and yeah, I don't even really want to say it's references. It is references, but they just feel like the magic makes sense because
totally
you've run into that kind of thing before. So I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun. reading that.
Okay,
So if
I
you
love
like
it.
fairy tales, I recommend.
Well, this is another slight update, but have I ever told you about my troubling addiction to true crime stuff?
Oh, yes.
And so I've gone cold turkey and I was doing great, but I sort of fell back into it a little bit. So I'm reading a true crime book at the moment. It's not too gruesome, but it's pretty. Anyway, I might need a palate cleanser.
Yeah, that sounds
Maybe
like
this would
polar
be a good-
opposite.
Yeah, for sure. I need to go back to full. Because I'm always like, I can handle it, and I can't handle it at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fairy tales, of course, can be very gruesome, but
So, yeah.
I in this book, there are gruesome things, but it's like told in a way where you aren't like dragged through the gruesome. It's
Yeah.
just
Oh,
like,
that's such a good way of
you know.
describing it.
So I love that.
There was a podcast. Okay, sorry, now I'm really getting off topic, but there's a podcast called Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest.
Oh.
And it was someone retelling the Grimm's fairy tales, but like in the really, the original sort of versions.
The
And it was great.
grimmest.
So, yeah, and so he had like a metric, like this is a grim one, this is a grimmest. And so the girls could be like, no, peace out. I don't want to listen to the grimmest. And so,
That's really cool.
because they are better than their mom, who is like, listens to that stuff and then can't sleep forever. But anyway, okay, what are we doing today apart from me? I'm a little overexcited because we haven't talked in a couple of weeks.
No, I'm really excited too. Yeah. So we're talking about making choices, specifically about like what to do. Where I guess I'm thinking about that moment when, I don't know how many people share this feeling that I have, where it's like, I have 5 things that have all made the criteria of I'm going to work on them, and now I just cannot decide what to do because they all seem very important, and so I'm not going to do any of them, and instead I'll panic about all of them. And so to kick it off,
Relatable.
I found a couple quotes. I'm stealing it and doing 2 quotes from Tony Robbins, who is so good about, whenever I read Tony Robbins or hear a quote from him or something, it helps me get out of the wrong mindset I'm in. I mean, that mindset that I'm describing of I can't decide what to do, that's something's gone wrong, when I'm at that point. And so Tony's really good at helping get on the right track. So anyway, 2 of them. Identify your problems, but give your power and energy to solutions. And it's a good reminder. The other one that I really thought fit with this is successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers.
Oh, yeah.
And so I should read Tony Robbins more often, but whenever I do, I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember who I am and how to be who I want to be,
Yeah. Well, is it called, like, because there is another thing called choice paralysis, but I think that's slightly different where but it is when you just have too many options, so you just like, nope.
Yeah. And yeah. So we'll talk about, I thinking through this topic, I kind of had a revelation of being like, oh, I'm thinking about this entirely wrong, actually.
Oh my God, okay, I want to hear this.
So yeah, but just to do a little more introduction, I remember you talking about you're reading chapter 12 and you're like, but what about chapter 13? And when you said that, I was like, I don't relate to that at all. Don't know what you're talking about. And then at some point I was like, no, I do that with every single thing ever. I'll be like in the shower and I'm like, should I be in the shower? Maybe I should instead be, and so Wouldn't it just be much nicer to be peaceful with whatever decision I made? So how to decide what to do is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. And I feel like, will I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Because I think this is something that I think is quite particular to what you're going through right now, right? Where, like, I was going to say, this is great for me when it's about teaching because I clearly know what I need to do. I need to do the preparation for the class I'm about to walk into. So, do you know what I mean? That's like enforced prioritization or something.
Yes.
And it's so easy, because there's just like, there's a quiz on Friday. That's what needs to happen.
Gotta write the quiz. Yeah.
Totally. And then anything that's outside that realm is completely paralyzing to me. Like, it's just like, it's so difficult then to choose. Do you know what I mean? So I think the thing that works for me is when there's like an external structure that's determining what I have to do. Do you know what I mean? But like when you're like what you're describing, where you have 5 equally valid choices, like that's horrendous. Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
Yeah.
I totally know what you mean. There's of course moments where it's obvious. You got to prepare for lecture. You got to write the quiz that you're gonna print, and then and so it's the times where it's not obvious, and you've got moments yeah, you've got lots of good choices. Exactly.
Well, and I
agree.
even, like, I talked to someone recently and they were teaching a course in a different type of discipline, but it was one that, like, isn't a linear situation. And they were, like, talking about how to choose where to put stuff. And I was like,
Oh.
horrible. Because, like, at least, all of these publishers have given me a table of contents. I
You don't have to choose
follow that order. Right. And, like, it's just so, yeah. That
is
really
interesting,
difficult.
because if you start with, I normally do my classes that way, where we're going to go through the chapters in order, and then sometimes I'll say, I really would prefer it if chapter 10 and 11 were switched, actually,
Totally.
because otherwise they get so confused with the chapter 10 stuff that we're not really doing in 11, whatever it is, and so then I can make the decision because I thought of it. It occurred
Yes.
to me as a good idea, and but you're starting with some kind of structure.
So I want to qualify here as well. And when I said this is uniquely your situation, just in case people are first-time listeners, because you're on sabbatical and you're not
Yes.
teaching this year. And so I wonder what it's like having that external structure of, like, it's week 3. We always do this in week 3. Like,
Yes.
what it's like for that. So
Very
yeah.
good point. And I do think that's kind of why I thought of this topic right now, is because, normally there's some balance of these things. Like, there's quite a high proportion of things where you must do it by this time because you have a class or an exam or whatever it is. And with all of that gone, which is fantastic, I've had a lot more time to think about, well, okay, how do I decide what to do instead?
Totally.
So, shall I tell you my revelation, or do you have more?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, don't know.
So I kind of have to walk through it. So yeah, I've had this one paper, this research paper, has been my main task that I have decided is the most important thing to work on for, like, the last 3 months. But I've had minimal progress the last 2 months because I have been resisting doing it. I never really want to do it. And then the thing is that there's kind of this cascading effect where papers 2 and 3 that I also want to do, whenever I think about it, I'm like, no, but they're less important than paper 1, so I really will do paper 1 first. I'm confident in that decision, but I really don't want to do paper 1, so I'm not doing it, so then I'm not doing paper 2 or 3, and then I feel kind of like, there's also things like, I don't know, I agreed to do this National Science Foundation proposal review, and I do want to do that, I'm going to do it, but it's less important than paper 1, so I guess I won't do that either.
Yeah.
So I just feel really stuck when I'm like, what should I do? And anyway, I was thinking about it and reflecting on, like, how do you choose what to do? And so the way I was thinking about it was, I have these 5 things. How do I pick? And I started thinking about tips and tricks for how do you pick between these 5 options. And, things like, I'll just pick anything. I'm just going to pick an item and decide I'm going to work on it.
Or something.
Yeah, like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to commit to it. Or maybe I'm going to allot a certain amount of time each day for paper number 1, and then in addition to that, do whatever task speaks to me. And all of that's great. I think those are all helpful. But upon further reflection and chatting it out with Ralph, I think all of those tips and tricks address the symptom, not the actual core issue. Because the core issue is that I'm resisting that main paper. It's not that I can't decide what to do. It's that I know what I want to do, and but I also don't want to do it, and then I'm not doing it. So I suggest that resistance to a task that I've already decided is worthy of doing is the actual cause of this indecision and struggle with choice. It's not that I can't choose. It's that I'm resisting something that I already chose. And so now I'm asking the right question. The question is now, how do I get past this resistance on paper 1, not how do I choose what to do? And so now I'm getting much better answers. Suddenly, things come to mind. It's like, I don't know, I could get some M&Ms that I eat while I do my paper 1, or, just whatever. Or I could try to start by just dashing off a draft and not worry about trying to make the paragraphs exact, or I could just do it for 20 minutes each day. Whatever, there's millions of ways to get over resistance. Now that I'm saying, how do I get over my resistance, instead of how do I choose what to do, ideas that are actually useful are coming to me. So these new ideas are actually helping me address the actual problem. And even realizing this, I kind of realized that my degree of resistance was out of proportion to the actual thing. Like, I started feeling like, man, if I've been resisting this for 2 months, then it must be a huge, big problem. But no, it's not. Like, I can just go write some stuff. Why would, like, what was my fear was that I'd, like, unveil myself as a fraud who doesn't know how to write papers or something. But, like, why would that happen? I'm just going to look up stuff that I don't know, and if I can't figure it out, I'll ask someone who does. Like, now that I'm thinking about the right issues, the answers are just appearing in front of me. Like, if I don't know how to calculate dust fluxes for atmospheric input, I'll call up somebody who does and figure it out. It'll be fine, So anyway, I just, in conclusion, I feel like when I'm in that moment of I can't decide what to do, these all seem really important, and I am just stuck, I'm going to look for things like, am I actually just resisting one of them? And I'm going to try to, ideally notice this resistance earlier on and attract the resistance rather than this indecision that just comes from the resistance. So there you go. That's my revelation.
That's really mind-blowing. So can I tell you, like, the first thing, which is sort of a little bit sideways to this whole thing, but the minute you said writing a paper, I'm like, oh, like, I just feel like this absolute weight of the world on me.
So there's the resistance.
Right, but like, why? Okay, so maybe this is a side episode, and we already did talk about it, but like, why is that so? Like you're saying, like, sure, if you don't know how to do the thing, then you just figure out how to do the thing.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like it's like just so loaded in some way that I think is just signaled to, like, through a million interactions we've had over the years. Like, I'm writing a paper, isn't that very impressive? Or I'm writing a paper, I'm so stressed. Or whatever those things are, like, have all added up to just this, like, oh no, like the paper.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then also, I'm sure, well, I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, sabbatical, like, I'm always like, I start the weekend, I'm like, oh my God, I've just used up 10 minutes of the weekend. And, like, you know what I mean? So I'm imagining on sabbatical, I would be, oh my God, it's been a month and I haven't, like, whatever. So that's interesting too. But this whole thing about the symptom, not the cause, that's revolutionary.
Yes, exactly. I agree completely. And it's like, I've been thinking about it all wrong. It's actually, it's so, I knew that I was resisting writing the paper, but I didn't realize that was a problem. I thought, oh, well, I can get over that easily by just going and writing it, which is true. But I need to think about how am I going to get over resisting it. I can't just say, So anyway, it's a whole different way of thinking about it.
So much more compassionate.
Yes.
Because the other approach of like, well, obviously I need to be taken in hand and I'm going to get the hat and I'm putting everything in and obviously I'm incapable of making a decision, so I have to hand it over to the universe or whatever. And this instead is like, okay, Claire, you are a good, lovely, dedicated, hardworking person, so why do you not want to write this paper?
Exactly. And then when I thought it through,
exactly.
And it was amazing that it was true that I feared writing the paper because I thought, the thing is that it involves a region of the ocean that I'm not as familiar with and a couple elements that I'm not as familiar with, and it'll involve other people and they're familiar with those elements and maybe the region of the ocean, so that's scary. And then as soon as I realized that was the problem, I was like, what a silly problem. That's not a problem. And so even just realizing that was the problem kind of made it not exist anymore, So that's
just
pretty
saying
exciting.
it out loud can just take the wind out of its sails. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love this, and I'm wondering how it kind of. So the biggest way this has come up with for me lately was I had a job interview, and in the interview they said, if you have all of these competing projects, how would you prioritize? And I was like, and I have no idea what I said. But in my head,
funny with interviews. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like you black out. You're like, afterwards, you're like, what? Yeah. But in my head, secretly, I was like, based on who will be most mad at me, that's how I prioritize things. And I have been kind of having this thing, just all life stuff about like, and I just genuinely don't know the answer, but like, what would it look like if I only did things I wanted to do?
I bet it'd be glorious.
Right. Oh man, I love that word. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just so, and I know, I guess the assumption is, right, my secret fear is that I am just a lazy article and then I will just like get into bed and never get back out again. Do you know what I mean? And it's like even what you're saying with the like, well, I can't be trusted to do this, instead just being like, okay, but why am I resisting this? Or do I want to do this? Or not just based on who will be most mad at me if I don't do the thing they want me to do. Like, can I make a decision Like, how do you decide what the thing is? And the only way I've done it is through deadlines. Like, if something is urgently, but like, is there another way of choosing?
Sure. I mean, that's bringing up that whole 4-box grid thing of like urgent versus not urgent and important versus not important. And obviously you do the urgent, important things first. But then after that, it's kind of dangerous. You could do the urgent, non-important things, but you should really do the important. Like if they're not important, maybe you shouldn't do them at all or whatever. The Eisenhower decision matrix, Ralph reminded me, is what that's called.
But then, and I think what I'd like to shift towards is my own decisions about the relevant importance or the relative. You know what I mean? Because like I feel like currently I'm just very reactive to things.
Yes,
I'm like, this person says I have to do this, and then blah blah blah. Instead of like, you know, how does this fit into what I think about this situation, or do I really think this is the relevant next step, or whatever? And that's really scary to me. But otherwise, I don't know how to prioritize things. Because you talked a bit about this, and obviously, what did you go through to decide the paper was the most important thing?
Yeah, I guess, so it's from my earliest, out of the 3 papers I'm thinking about, one of them is, 2 of them are from an active grant, and one is from one that just recently expired. So it's like, it would really finish off that whole project. It'd be like, now we have finished the grant and we finished the paper and we're moving on to the next thing. And so that's one reason. I mean, I guess that's probably the main reason. It would just like round out this perfectly, and it would also, you know, give me it would give me confidence that I can do it. It would, whenever I'm applying for future things, I can say these are the results of prior funding, and it'd be beautiful in lots of ways in terms of finishing the project, both in terms of practical, getting more funding and being clear, but then also like in myself being clear that I can totally round out the projects. But yeah, how do you decide? I mean, I think, so you're saying it's really scary to have that be your decision, and I agree, but I wonder, with a little bit of adjusting your mindset, it can also be really empowering that you get to say, which one am I most excited? I almost feel like it should be intuitive. If you can get rid of all this resistance crap, then be left with your intuition of what is the most exciting, what would be the most meaningful, what would be the most impactful, what would you be the most excited to do. I feel like that would probably be a good choice.
I think so, and I think like that's just a stage that I'm missing. And I think then when someone else comes along and says, hey, you need to do this thing, then you can confidently say, I've really thought about why I selected this as my most important thing, so I'm actually going to stick with it. Or if they have another reason that you're like, actually that does, you know what I mean? But just, I'm so reactive to things that it's like not a conscious decision that I'm really engaging with. So yeah, but I really like the idea of like really engaging with, why am I not wanting to do this thing? And like, because that's the thing I think that I also would like, is more choosing, like when you're in the procrastination hellscape, like you're just choosing to not do things rather than choosing to do things. And
Exactly. If I'm like, oh, I can't work on this paper, that's too scary, then I don't do anything.
Right.
Or I do something, but it wasn't very choice. Or like, same thing, I realize this applies all over across the board. Like, we've talked on the podcast many times about how much I hate grading, and I realize, obviously, I'm not getting to it because I'm resisting it. Not because I haven't found the spot for it on my schedule, but because I cleverly found other things to put on the schedule instead of where grading might have fit. So anyway, how do you...
Yeah, I think it's, because it's interesting kind of just what's like the mapping out that you described of your process, right? Because you have through another process decided that the paper one was the most important thing. And then like you couldn't actually let yourself move on to the other things because you knew that was true, but then you're not. Like, that's so interesting too.
Yes.
But the stuck, I think just being able to say I feel stuck is really powerful.
So then why am I stuck? Let's try to solve this problem. Yeah, exactly. I think I had a bunch of competing truths, like I shouldn't be stuck. This is silly. And I'm stuck. And so that's not helpful for solving the stuck problem. But yes, like you're saying, if you're like, how do you decide if you... I mean, I was finding that my issue was resistance, but maybe the issue is something like I haven't thought through what would be the most important, or I'm feeling compelled by this external factor, but I actually want to do this thing that seems more important to me. And so you have to like think that through and reconcile those two things.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this whole idea. I'm going to carry this around now for the next couple of weeks with the idea of resistance.
Yes. I'm amazed how much it's come up in just the 24 hours since I thought of it.
Yeah, but it is like, it's such a... Like, I'm resisting lots of things at the moment. Like, one thing I'm really resisting, maybe this is too personal, but like, I really need to pin down some financial stuff, and I just don't want to. Like, I just do not want to look at it. I don't want to know. And like, it's so weird because it's like, hey, I know I need to do this thing, and I just am like, no. And it really makes me like engage with or think of students, because you know when you're the teacher and you're like, why won't you just do this thing that's going to help you so much?
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's like when you just have the wall or the resistance comes up. Totally. And like, what's the way to... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, just engage with that instead of like, my thing is just always like, well, you shouldn't have resistance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's very demeaning and not helpful, but that's my reaction too, is like, well, don't be an idiot, just stop resisting it.
Totally.
Yeah. And I do want to say, I think it's worth considering whether the resistance is a good signpost. Like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this thing. Maybe you're resisting doing it because there's this external force that is telling you to do it, but there is something more important to do. But probably the times that, you know, if we resist something that we actually don't want to do, usually we can get rid of that thing. But it's the things that we want to do that we're resisting that hang around. And yeah, you know you want to do this financial thing. You've decided to do it. So the issue that's preventing you from doing it right now is that you are resisting doing it.
Yeah.
Which is hopefully empowering to solving that issue.
Mind-blowing. I love this.
Me too.
Yeah. Thanks for taking us through this whole kind of journey you went.
Oh, thank you. I didn't expect it. When I sat down to come up with what I wanted to say, I was just thinking I'd come up with some tips and tricks for choosing, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is not my problem at all. As an end-of-episode note, Ralph wants to recommend the book The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which is all about identifying resistance and how and why to fight it.
Ooh. For a minute there, sorry, I misread, and I was like, The Art of War, really, Ralph? But anyway, sorry, that's a different type of book altogether. So.
The War of Art. I know, flipped around. It immediately makes you think of that other one.
That is very cool.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you. That was mind-blowing. Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people you know if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.